Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. I'm Clayton Fletcher here in fabulous Las Vegas, where this Sunday I will be live streaming the TPE free roll on ACR Poker. So join us by clicking the link in the description of this podcast, and you can win your share of $1,000. I am in fabulous Las Vegas with not one but two special guests. We have a returning guest, a returning champion, a poker star in his own right with over $8 million in winnings. No, I'm not kidding about that. He's a run it once coach. He's also just an all around awesome dude. Matt Stout, welcome back. Matt, how you been?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. And it's not just Matt and me this time sitting in a Tesla somewhere. I actually have a bona fide movie star here, someone that Matt and I both have fun stories about how we met her, and now she's here with us in the studio, Shannon Elizabeth. Shannon, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's been so long since we've met. We actually played in a tournament together at the Playboy Mansion years ago.
For charity.
Yes, for charity, not for Hugh Hefner's,
for bunnies.
Yeah. Totally.
Solid clarification.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. It was for the firefighters and the families with the wildfires and all that stuff. So it was obviously a great cause. I was there representing Cake Poker, and you were there just being a hot movie star. How did you like that day? Do you remember anything about it?
I mean, I was there quite a few times for parties and events and stuff, and I've always had such a good time there. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those like iconic places that I think everyone dreams about, like what's it like to go to the Playboy Mansion. So even just to go for a charity fundraiser, it's just magical to be able to say, gosh, I was there.
I ended up getting third place in that tournament. Woo-hoo! And I won a prize. It's a guitar that's autographed by Hugh Hefner and 4 Playmates of the Year. Wow. It's one of my prized possessions, like poker trophies.
Has it worn off at all, the signatures?
It's in a case in my house. Like it's one of my it's in my trophy case. So yeah. But the funny thing about that tournament, we were at the same table with Brody Jenner and then a bunch of like random dudes who had like won seats on Cake Poker or whatever, right? Okay. So I busted you out of that tournament.
You would remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason I remember it so well is because you had the best hand by far, and I rivered you, and it was a brutal bad beat.
Oh, you're a river rat.
And I was a river rat, Shannon, and I felt bad.
As you should.
But the guys at my table made me feel even worse. Because they didn't want me to have any chips, and they didn't want Shannon Elizabeth to not be at our table anymore. So I was like, I'm sorry, guys. It's just poker. I mean, if I could bring her back, I would, but she's gone.
But was it one of those hands? Do you remember, was it one of those hands where the odds made it kind of a 50-50 call, or was it a really bad call for you or a push for you?
It was horrible. You had...
And I got it in good, and that's all I can do.
Shannon, you got it in so good. On the flop of Queen 7-6,
God, you had... do you remember that?
I remember every hand I've ever played.
Rain Man.
I had pocket jacks, and you went all in on the flop, and I thought you might have a draw or something, but you had ace queen, and I had jacks. Yeah. And the river came a jack, and that was the only reason you weren't there anymore. And the guys hated me.
Yeah, this has happened at the table before where like an unbelievably gorgeous woman gets knocked out, and it's just a bunch of dudes sitting there staring at each other after. And I look at the dude, and it's like, nah, it's fine. I'll just look at your face for the rest of the day. Last time I said that, the whole table just died.
Yeah. They hated me, okay? All right. But anyway, apparently you've forgiven me since then, Shannon.
I just don't even care anymore.
Yeah. It's all good.
I try to put all my beats out of my memory, so each time I play, I start fresh, and I don't harbor anything of the past.
That's great. I mean, that's a good attitude. And I know you've been working with Matt. He's been helping you with your poker game and everything. And we're going to get into poker in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about the Shannon Elizabeth Foundation. So what is it, and what's happening on July 3rd?
Okay, so the Shannon Elizabeth Foundation is kind of a second generation of what used to be Animal Avengers. So some people might remember I had a dog and cat rescue in Los Angeles. And after running it that way for a very long time, I just knew I wanted to help more animals on a bigger scale. Went on this journey of discovery, which led me to Africa and the poaching crisis in Africa. 2017, I moved to South Africa. And now we have a sanctuary there, and it's for endangered species. We have a blind black rhino that we take care of, and we need to start doing like a yearly fundraiser for our operating costs and expenses and expansion so we can take on more animals. So we are doing a big event with Charity Series of Poker on July 3rd. And it's going to be at the Sterling Club, and it starts at 5:30. And we want everyone to come and play some poker. There'll be cash prizes. There'll be lots of other prizes. There'll be a 50-50 raffle, a big silent auction where you can get trips to South Africa, trips to Botswana, some beautiful wildlife photography. We're actually unveiling some of my husband and I have started doing wildlife photography since we're out in the field anyway. So we're kind of unveiling some of our photography there. And we just got a really cool prize from Debbie Gibson. People like she's going back on tour. She's been touring and she has a concert in New York. And this would be to go to her concert and go to sound check and meet the band and everything. So we're going to be putting all that up there and making it live probably in the next 24 hours.
That is so cool. Matt, you're a big Debbie Gibson fan, aren't you?
Literally, I have no clue who that is.
Oh my God, a pop star from the 80s.
He's too
right?
young. He's too young.
I was born in '84, and I guess I missed that genre.
We'll play a song for you after this. You'll know her music.
If you could just not, that sounds like it'd probably be for the best.
Only in my dreams.
She's going to come. She's probably coming to the event.
As real as it may seem.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
probably
She'll be
have
at the event as
We should have
well.
her sing on break. Did you put her on the bounty list yet? We got to put a prize on her head.
I was going to. So I talked to her about being a bounty, and she was first on board, but she's only played poker once. So then I was going to try to give her a lesson, which is the recipe for disaster, I'm sure.
The blind leading the blind,
Yeah.
if you will.
What does this say for your coaching then?
Yeah, exactly.
But
We're getting there.
but she doesn't know yet that she wants to be a bounty, but she's donated this prize and she'll hopefully be there. So
Well, if she wants a lesson from both of us, we can both work on her game together before.
that would be cool. Well, I also have another friend. His name's James Ryan from Big Brother, and he's going to be coming. And I told him I would do some sort of lesson with him ahead of time. So
This sounds like it's going to be a star-studded event on
It
July
is,
3rd.
it
I can't
is.
wait.
Yeah, if you want, or like we could do a lesson with everybody, like a one-table seminar, like before the reception starts.
Oh, that would be
yeah,
cool.
that's one of the things that we've often considered doing and have done for a couple events where we have a lot of beginners coming. It makes people a lot more comfortable. We can kind of just give them a lesson, be like, wait for pairs and high cards and shove it all in. The event,
cool.
it's a super turbo. I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
get short stacked pretty fast anyway, so it's easy to just be like, hey, these are good hands, these are bad hands. Go all in
Yeah.
with good hands, full
Yeah.
bad hands.
yeah.
Guys, if you're going to be in Vegas on July 3rd and you've never been to a CSOP event before, I think this is the one to come to. You can meet Shannon Elizabeth, Debbie Gibson potentially, Katie Morgan's going to be there. Who else, Matt? Who else do you have confirmed for this one?
Leilani Munter, her friend who's a race car driver.
Yeah.
Jay Wasley from Ghost Adventures. I think Chris Moneymaker might be coming out. Still TBD on that one. And who else do you got?
So there's a poker pro in South Africa named Amit Karim. He's going to be coming out. He's one of our bounties. And actually a bunch of the pro poker community in South Africa, pro and I would say semi-pro because they're really good players. A lot of them are in town for the series and they've all said they'll come out to support. So I'm excited to introduce the U.S. pros to the South African pros and have them go head to head.
That sounds really fun. And I'll probably be a bounty too. I mean, usually that's the way we do it because I'm like the dead money at the table. So, and if you bust me, you get like prizes and stuff, right, Matt? Do you still have the usual sponsors doing the prizes?
We've switched it to a $100 Revolt Tattoos gift certificate with the medal off their neck if you knock them out. I still remember when I was a bounty for Bay 101, I busted on day 2, aces against kings. The guy hit a king. I got halfway out the front door of the place and then realized that I still was wearing the medal, and I had to walk back and hand them this medal and sign a T-shirt with my face on it. I was like, this is going to be a brutal second walk of shame.
That's tough. Yeah, that's pretty harsh. So you've been coaching Shannon here in her poker. Tell us about Shannon as a poker student. Now, she's obviously been playing. Like, I played with her 12 or 13 years ago at the Playboy Mansion, so it's not like she's a rookie. But what are you teaching her, and what do you think she's learning?
I've actually been working with her and trying to teach her how to work with GTO Wizard AI to look at solver outputs, because GTO Wizard AI is the easiest solver ever to use. I know you wanted a plug in there, but I actually mean it. I know they're a sponsor, but it's legitimately a great product. I am a poker nerd at heart. I'm great with math, and I'm a computer guy, and I still hated PO Solver. It was just so clunky, and the fact that you had to like choose the bet sizing outputs and options yourself, and there's like a garbage in, garbage out issue if you give it bad sizings and bad options. Like, if you don't give it a big enough sizing to bluff river, it's not going to bluff river, and then you're going to look at the sim and think that you shouldn't bluff river when you should just bluff 150% pot, things like that. So GTO Wizard AI is like pretty easy to use in terms of just being able to go in as someone who's not amazing with computers. I'm teaching a lot of my students that, and have been doing run it once videos of solving hands. So kind of trying to analyze our hands from the typical just exploitative and intuitive perspective, and then taking it from there and then plugging the inputs into the solver and seeing what the solver says and how it conflicts or confirms what I thought initially about how to play a hand. So, but yeah, I was kidding about the blind leading the blind. Shannon's definitely got some poker chops. She's been playing a very long time, and it's an honor to be able to try to help her take her game to the next level, because I know she's been battling a lot in South Africa and is obviously going to be playing some World Series events and already did yesterday. So definitely want to help her make some more deep runs.
Fantastic. I want to hear about the event that you played yesterday here at the World Series of Poker, but just to, kind of piggyback on what Matt was saying about GTO Wizard, like this summer I've been creating comedy content for poker.org, and when I made a video for them, they were like, great, just upload it to the drive in your folder. And they might as well have been speaking like Lithuanian or so. I had no idea how to do that. I am not a techie, okay? I know how to turn on my phone and press record, that's it. But I am very good at using GTO Wizard, because all you have to do is plug in your range or whatever the events were, like somebody raised, somebody called, whatever, and then it tells you what hands you're supposed to have. Or you can go the other way and plug in your hands and it tells you what you should have done. So that's what we're going to try to do for you today, Shannon. But before we do, I want to make sure everybody knows about the link in the description of this podcast. It's what we call an affiliate link for GTO Wizard. You can click it, get 24 hours unlimited access to all of GTO Wizard's wonderful features, and then save 10% off your first purchase. So enough about that. What did you play?
Okay, yesterday I played the Poker News event, the World Series of Poker.
So that's a $600 buy-in?
It was a $600 buy-in, and last I checked, I think there were like close to 5,000 entries.
Wow, okay.
The field was enormous.
Big prize pool for a $600 tournament.
Yeah. So I think the one thing that I feel like really applies that maybe GTO Wizard doesn't take into account, which maybe it's just me getting in my head, is my image at the time that I do the hand. Because, you're playing this whole time for hours, and I can see what people think of me, and when they're making these hero calls, they think I'm bluffing or, what they're doing. So then I have to, I think, alter my game a bit based on what I'm getting from the people at the table and what I've put out so far.
To me, this is a very actor kind of perspective on poker, right? And I like it because I was also trained in theater myself. Mm-hmm. And I think that we learn like how we're coming across, and we care about that in a way that somebody that's like just a math nerd might not. Right, so you're thinking about your table image and what you think your opponents think of you, or what they think you think of them, and things like that, which is so important in the game.
Well, I'm also very aware, like like there was a guy to my left that I was very aware that he was getting into hands with me because I was in the hand, no matter what he had, because he thought he could outplay me. So because I'm very observant with that stuff, and they don't know that I'm observing it, right? And early on, I think I got some really good hands, and I played them well, and I was able to knock a guy out. And as he left the table, he's like, "You're a beast, young lady," an absolute beast. And I was like, okay, that's good for my table image.
You're a beast.
Yeah, you're a beast. But then there were a couple other guys, like times where I played down to the river, and I knew the only way I could win the river was a bluff, and then they call it, and I lost. And like one guy called it with bottom pair on a very like wet board, and I'm like, okay, so they're not believing me now, so I need to adjust that a bit.
Do you think there might have been something in your poker face that gave you away or anything?
I don't know, and that's something I would really like to know. Like, I'd really like to record myself playing and review, but I try to be very still. I wear glasses partially because I'm blind and they're prescription. I wear a scarf to cover my neck so nobody can read like my heartbeat and my vein going, because it does that whether I'm bluffing or whether I have it. Like, my heart goes crazy. So I don't know how you read that.
Well, poker's exciting. It gets the blood pumping for sure.
We actually did that one time. Tom Marchese and I led a sim for someone who was at the final table of the main event, Amir Lehavat, and he had Zachary Elwood, the tells expert, video recording him during the sim that we were doing so that he could start to try to get a baseline of whether or not he was giving away tells. So it's definitely something that wouldn't be the first time that someone recorded themselves playing to see if they could catch themselves giving off any tells. And I do the same thing. That was the first thing my mind went to. If I get called by bottom pair, I was like, what's wrong with my face? Why did my face get called? What happened to my face?
I must have been twitching or something. Like, they knew something.
Was my eye bugging out? Like, what just occurred?
But I'm the same way, with the blood. Like, I feel my heart pounding in my chest when I'm bluffing or when I have the nuts.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they would really glean from the fact that, especially like you're at the World Series of Poker final table, of course you're going to have your heart pumping. I wonder, though, Matt, if you're doing a sim, you're not actually playing for $8 million, right? So are you going to have the same tells as you would when the real money is on the line?
No, probably not. But, I mean, it's still... It's something, and it's still worth it. And he's trying to put himself in it. So, honestly, that comes down to, like, how much he's putting everything else aside. Because for me... one of the most important things for me that has really carried me in tournament poker is that I don't let any thoughts of the money come up at the table at all. I think about the game for the game. I look at how many big blinds we have. I know the payout structure just in terms of, percentages and how big the pay jumps are and how I should be adjusting my strategy for the pay jumps. But I don't, you can't be thinking about, I'm playing for life-changing money here. Like, you're not going to be able to play your A game. So that's something where I let myself think about it a little bit away from the table just to get the blood flowing and to motivate myself. But when I'm at the table, that's something that I just completely block out. So it depends how good his mental game is, how much he meditates so that he has control of his own mind and does things to make sure that he can really fully put that aside when he's at the table. So to that end, if he's actually doing that properly, he should have almost the same level of anxiety in game, just because he's not thinking about the money, because the difference between zero and millions of dollars should be negligible enough if you're really controlling your mind the way you need to play high stakes well.
There you go. I could just listen to Matt talk poker all day. Don't you? You know what I mean? Like, this guy really knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, but I need to record him usually and play it back and listen over and over to really think about it.
While you're playing. Yeah. Well, I know you had a big hand in the 5,000 players, $600 tournament. So why don't we do this? Let's talk through the hand. You can tell us every time it's your turn to make a decision. Matt and I can chime in before you tell us what you did. Okay?
Okay.
So do you remember all the details?
I think so. I wrote down what I could because it was the only hand I wrote down because I felt like maybe I could have gathered more value from it. Okay. I wouldn't say it was my biggest hand, but I was just trying to decipher if I should have done mainly on the river.
All right. No, this is great. I mean, I think it's really important to be able to look at hands, either hands that we won or hands that we lost, even if it wasn't maybe necessarily the biggest pot of the day.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these different situations will come up over and over, and learning how to play these spots is very important. So, yeah, let's go. Do you remember what the blinds were? Let's start
Yeah,
there.
they were 500, 1,000 blinds.
And you had how many chips?
I had I'd been going up and down all day. So at this point, I was probably around 25, 30,000.
And how was that relating to the average around then?
They weren't posting it, so I
Okay.
don't at that point. That was starting stack. So I was going up to 60, back down to 30, up to 60, back. So I was all day
We've
long.
all been there.
Yeah.
All right. So,
So I
500,
was-
1,000.
Yeah. You're probably going to say right off the bat, I shouldn't have even been in the hand because I was I was under the gun, king, queen off.
Okay, Matt,
No,
what are
that's
your
fine.
thoughts?
That's okay.
Yeah, that's a very standard open.
Okay.
It's funny because that's like kind of one of the classic jokes is that you'll just listen to someone talk about a hand history for 6 to 8 minutes and then
Yeah.
go, okay, fold pre.
Fold pre. Fold pre. Don't be
thinking
involved
that.
in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing we talk about on this podcast quite a bit is that I actually do fold some of these marginal hands in early
Yeah.
position, even though GTO wizard or a poker coach like Matt would tell me to play them, just
Yeah.
because I know that I'm going to make so many mistakes when I'm out of position.
Yeah.
Like I think I make up for it when I'm in position. I play more hands, so it all balances out.
But one thing you have to consider there is your opponent going to make more mistakes than you? How soft is the tournament? If you're still, it doesn't matter if you're going to make mistakes if your opponent's going to make more mistakes, or if they're going to play, about equal to you, then you should still be opening the GTO range. And one thing that I was thinking earlier is that that's one of the reasons your image and how you come across and the fact that people are going to attack you, not even just as a celebrity, but also as a woman. Like there's going to be men that are coming after you just because you're a woman.
Nobody knew who I was. Nobody. I think one guy sat down later that was like, "Oh, I've seen you on TV," and the guy next to me was like, "What was she streaming on YouTube?" So they had no idea. Like even the dealer was like, "Oh, you look like this actress." Like so, I think I've been out of poker long enough that I was pretty undercover in that sense. So I think it was just because I was a woman.
Yeah,
But you know
someone came up to Katie at a recent CSOP event and told her that she looks like Katie Morgan.
She's like, I get that a lot.
Yeah, I think
that's what she said.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
But Shannon hasn't changed at all. Like, if you've ever seen any movie she was in, like, she looks exactly the same. So
Bless you.
if they know, I don't see any difference from that day at the Playboy Mansion when everybody hated me. All right, let's get back to your hand.
I'm convinced that that's why we all need glasses as we get older, so we keep looking good to people.
Yeah, but also the other thing, with regard to your image, we can adjust your range in GTO Wizard. We can take what they say would be the GTO range to be opening, but we'll be like, if you're opening tighter, or if they perceive that you're opening tighter, we can adjust their range as a result. So there's things that you can do to adjust the sim as well, but it's also partially knowing what the sim is and then just how much you're going to stray from it for exploitative purposes if you think that someone is straying from GTO themselves.
Yeah, I
so
definitely need
there's
your
ways
help.
we can adjust for that.
Okay, I definitely need your help with that.
Yeah, and I mean, between Matt and the program, it'll just really change the way you're playing poker. It's totally changed the way I play poker. Being able to use artificial intelligence is like these computers are better at the game than we'll ever be.
Yeah.
So you can learn from them. You know?
And it's not like you're trying to memorize every single output that it ever gives you, but the
Yeah.
basics is like I've been using it for 6 months and it just keeps coming up in the back of my mind if I'm playing a hand at the series, especially if I'm playing against great players like in all the Euros and the pros. Like I'm trying to stick to GTO and do what GTO would do because it's the best way to counter them, and you don't want to stray too far if they're also playing really well. So it's literally just popping up in the back of my mind mid-hand, like based on all the other sims I've run. It's kind of just moving the needle of how you think about the game, and then in game now I'm just like, well, I ran this sim in a somewhat similar spot and I was surprised how tight the output was, so this is probably a fold and things like that. It kind of it slowly moves your internal needle as you start simming more hands.
So we've got 25 big blinds or maybe 30 big blinds here.
Yeah.
What about a min raise? under the gun off this stack? Is that because we're going to be out of position? And what do you think?
Yeah, so in terms of sizing, I used to go with over 100 big blinds. I was opening to 3x, 50 to 100, I was opening 2.5x. And if I had like 25 to 50, I was 2.25ing, and then min raising if I was 25 big blinds effective or less. Essentially just trying to control the pot more. And, you know, the shorter you are, the more you're raising as a steal. So the more you want the ratio to be effective in terms of winning the pot pre. But it looks like GTO Wizard is going with like 2.1 sizing even when you're like 150, 200 big blinds deep even early in the tournament. So I've been moving more toward min raise or 2.1. The weird thing is with the way that they're coloring up so fast and doing big blind ante, you literally can't open to 2.1 a lot of the time at the series. There's times where you can only open to 2 1/3.
Yeah, because you don't have the right chip denominations.
So I've just I mean, and it's also obviously going to be a very negligible difference between min raising and opening to 2.1. So I've generally been moving to a min raise as a result of my study with GTO Wizard.
Great. So Shannon, what did you make it?
I think I made it 25, so
Okay.
2.5.
2.5.
Yeah.
Still,
Yeah.
the difference between opening min and 2.5 is still always going to be negligible. If you're going with like a reasonable sizing, it doesn't really make a huge difference as long as you're not like 3xing and 4xing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I
like you're
definitely
scared to
didn't
see
do
the
that.
flop. You make it 4x just so you hope everybody folds or
Yeah, well,
something.
that's when you're telegraphing. You have like 8s or 9s or something.
Yeah, you
I
don't
think.
want them to call you.
They
Yeah.
don't know what to do.
Yeah. Okay.
That's also one of my favorite things is that I make a lot of money off sizing tells. If someone's opening or c-bet sizing is indicative of what they have, I start
Yeah.
attacking that pretty aggressively. So
Yeah.
it's one of the things that I'm very, very tuned in on. I don't think I'm amazing at live tells or anything. I generally, a lot of times, can just kind of, without knowing what it is exactly, there's times where I'm just like, this guy looks nervous, I'm calling, and I'm right. But overall, I think that like sizing tells are kind of underrated in the game, and it's obviously something that I'm dialed into since half my play has been online. It's one of the few things we can cling to for online play.
It's sizing tells, of course.
But can I ask you something? When you say you're attacking, like let's say you put them on 8s and there's an ace on the board, but you still have nothing, you're going to attack like you've hit the ace, I assume. But what if they've caught you in a bunch of bluffs already? Will that affect if you do that?
That's a really good question. Like, how does your table image affect that decision?
Usually, I'll adjust back and slow down if I'm running them over. But there's also times where a good player will level themselves. If you like 3-bet them right after that, they're going to be like, oh, well, he's not going to bluff me again right after. He just
Right.
bluffed me. So
Right.
there's definitely levels to it. You are going to make subtle adjustments and like go back into the Nick cave for a minute, if so to speak, once you get caught bluffing. But you can't do it too much, otherwise we go back to being too predictable. You know, like if you're always going to have it right after that, then it's pretty exploitable as well.
Yeah. And it's tough because I noticed I was just playing with things yesterday, and there was like one other hand, not to veer off, but there was one other hand where I think I had raised and I got 2 callers and then a guy re-raised. And I decided that I was going to re-raise him and try to take all that money. And that time it worked because I felt like they thought there's no way she's going to do this because I was the initial raiser under the gun. So if I make it look like I have aces or kings or something, and it looked to me like he was just trying to steal the money out there because they just think I'm going to lay down. So that time it worked. But then there are other times where it doesn't work. So
I mean,
I'm
she's
trying to
really
play with
talking.
that.
She's really talking about range advantage and nuts advantage, right?
Yeah. And that was one of the things I was surprised with the first time I did a hand history review with her. I just kind of assumed that she was going to be on the tight side and,
Right.
play like a celebrity female would be expected to play. And then I was like, Jesus Christ, she's got some belligerence in her. This is good. You want to err on the side of aggression in poker at all times. So I was like, this is a good baseline to start off with. It's harder to coach somebody to get aggressive and have them be okay with making aggressive mistakes. I was like, this is great. We just need to like figure out where the breaks are, where she should be applying more aggression. But like when you start off with an aggressive baseline, you're way better off.
Well, when we get caught bluffing, it's embarrassing. Right, for some people, especially when you're learning the game, it's embarrassing. It's like, I was being dishonest. I was doing something bad. Bluffing is part of the game, you know?
Get over that as quickly as possible. That
I'm
is.
embarrassed. I just think, oh shit, now I'm gonna have to slow down. I won't get away with as much for a while. They're gonna start calling me more.
Yeah.
No,
you
that's
know,
fine. Start having it, and now they're going to think that you don't. Whatever the
Yeah.
table dynamic, and as long as you can get into their heads, it's one of the reasons that I love that I was studying business management and psychology before I got into poker. I didn't realize I was double majoring in poker and poker. It was it was perfect. So
Yeah.
I love just being able to try to figure out those game flow dynamics, those games of chicken. Who's going to do what next? Like, is he
Yeah.
really going to bluff me again right now? Like,
Yeah.
is he going to stare at me after he bluffed me on the river? Like, nah, he hasn't.
Right.
Just little stuff
That's
like
it,
that.
yeah.
There's so many little things where people don't realize that they're giving off a lot of information, and it helps you stray from whatever GTO wizard tells you.
I would love for us to go play like a small tournament where you and I can end up at the same table and actually like you can watch like if I have tells or what I'm doing or what my table image is and how I'm trying to play against it and just be like, okay, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have done this. Like,
So I got to tell you about this great event coming up on July 3rd. Shannon Elizabeth Foundation CSOP. I have a feeling that you and I are both going to be there. And gaming has told me I can manipulate table draws.
oh, good.
Oh, excellent.
This is an actual email thread I have with the gaming
That's
control board.
amazing.
Like, hey, we have sponsors or husband and wives that want to play together or specifically don't want to play together.
Right, yeah.
We get some of both. And they're
Yeah.
like, it's a charity event. We're not worried about it. You
Okay.
don't have to randomize draws.
So how do I get tickets for this anyway, Matt?
You go to charityseriesofpoker.org. The extension is SEF67, but you can just go to the main website. You'll see the logo for her amazing foundation. Click it. You can buy sponsorship packages, tickets, make donations, and pretty soon we will have the link up there for the auction as well. So you'll be able to go there, click over to our auction site, and bid on items. You can bid on things from anywhere in the world as long as they're not huge frame things that we're going to have to ship to Australia.
Right.
Well,
we don't want to do that.
We're framing the photos for the event, but if somebody overseas buys the photo, we've got it. We didn't mount it so that we couldn't roll it up.
That's right.
So we figure that way we could take it out of the framing and ship it to anyone, anywhere in the world.
If you win the auction, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that you can bid on things from anywhere in the world, and we've like shipped sunglasses to Australia, but it got less funny when we had to ship like a gigantic autographed Panthers jersey from Florida to Vegas, and I think it went for like $1,300 and was like $400 in shipping.
The shipping.
It was fully donated by the Panthers, which I mean, I think the value of that jersey just went up a couple days ago too. So
Definitely did.
congrats,
Yeah, absolutely.
congrats to one of our top bidders who won that thing on a
Yeah.
perfect year to have a team signed jersey by the Panthers.
Shout out to the Panthers. Champion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats.
All right, so we open 2.5. We're going to get back to the hand now.
We're talking about poker.
right,
And
the
we're
hand.
talking about the first hand, not the second
Yeah.
hand.
No,
All right, we're
she's-
going to get into this.
She's
swear.
got 25 big blinds. Her M is 10. I like to do M, as you guys know.
Yeah.
So she's open to 2.5 and under the gun. So what happened?
Okay, so guy to my left folds, guy to his left does a flat call.
Okay.
Now this guy hasn't been at the table a whole day, but he'd been there for probably an hour. Pretty solid Asian player, male Asian player. He had a bigger stack at this point.
Okay.
But he was flat calling a lot and trying to play back at me. So I was on to a little bit of it, but he wasn't overly aggressive.
Okay.
Everyone folds back around, so there's no other raises, re-raises, anything.
Okay, so we're going to be heads up from out of position.
Yep.
Hero has the king queen offsuit versus an Asian player that she suspects might be trying to
playing
play
at
some
me.
games with her.
Yeah. but you know, I also will put them on maybe a low suited ace with the flat call in that position. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, what's he flat calling me with? It could be Jack 10, it could be a low suited ace, it could be just something small he wants to see the flop.
I think small to mid pairs and
Yeah.
suited broadways are some of the main candidates you should expect, and like, you know, middle suited connectors, 10-9, 10-8 suited.
Okay.
Not that they're necessarily GTO, but that's what people tend to be flatting with a lot.
Got it. Yeah, I agree with that range.
So the flop comes ace, king, king, 2 clubs.
So this is a great flop. We have 3 of a kind, right? And we just hope this guy has an ace, right?
Yeah, so that's what I'm definitely hoping that. And I also know that a lot of people just put me on playing big cards. So often if an ace comes and I don't have an ace, I will play like I have the ace because they think I have the ace. So at this point, I just check.
Okay.
You know, I want to see what he does. Hopefully he has an ace, because if I bet out on that, they know I'm going to have one of those. So I'm trying to play like I've missed.
So Matt, as far as the decision to not c-bet here, this feels like a flop that I would bet probably one big blind with my whole range. What is your thought?
Is it heads up?
Heads
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I'm probably going to bet this just because I'm bluffing so often that when I have value hands, I need to be betting as well. I feel like I think GTO Wizard's probably going to check some percentage of the time, but it's probably going to c-bet the majority of the time here. One of the other considerations, too, is that when you're this shallow, you don't need to get too fancy to try to get paid off. Like if he has ace, queen, ace, jack, you should just be able to bet 3 streets and hopefully get called when you shove river, because you're not so deep that you need to get a check raise in at some point in order to play for stacks. Like we could bet. So we're probably looking at like a 6 big blind pot with 25 big blinds behind. So if we go like 2/3 pot on all streets, we get 4 big blinds in on the flop and 9 in on the turn, so that we can shove river. Oh no, we can go smaller than that. We could probably go half pot on all streets and get it all in.
See, nobody was betting that big at this point at our table. You know,
You don't have to do what other people are doing.
No, I know, but if I don't go with the flow of what the table's been doing, and you go outside of that, then suddenly people become suspicious. I've noticed, especially when I'm doing something that's not okay. Everyone has now accepted we're going to do 2 to 2.5 pre-flop, and then suddenly somebody does like 5 and they're like, oh shit, you
Something's
know?
up, yeah.
Yeah, so I try to like blend in with the flow of what we've been doing.
So your concern is that if you bet too much,
If I bet anything,
if
he's
you bet
gonna fold.
anything, you're worried that you're going to lose your fish that you have on the line,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what do you think about checking to try to deceive this guy?
I don't hate it, and I do it some percentage of the time, but this is also a board where like people who have like 10-9 suited and don't have a flush draw are just not going to go nuts. It's not like other boards. There's more in terms of getting people to think that their overpair is good, their mid pair is good. They're like,
I'm just trying to get them to bluff me if they don't have anything, though, which everyone
this is a board that
tries
they
to
don't bluff
bluff
as
me.
of. Yeah, for sure. And if we want to do that, I think it may be better to bet really small on the flop, let him like float you, and then just check turn to him and let him bluff. If we
This
want,
would be
if we
my
want
plan.
To try to trap him. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
I would bet one big blind, like 1,000.
Okay.
And then always check the turn.
Because then it also, you're doing it in a way where it looks the same as what you do with, with 10-9 suited when you're completely giving up. You make
Yeah.
a small bet, you try to stab at it, and then you check turn. So that in that sense, you make yourself tougher to play against, in that you're going to have complete air and the nuts, or close enough to it, when you do this, that it makes it harder for your opponents to float you and try to bluff turn. If you're too predictable, then it's going to be a lot easier for them to just call and bluff turn with nothing. If you're betting small on the flop and just always check folding when you do check turn.
And did your opponent bet this flop?
Yeah, he bet 1,500.
Okay, so that worked out. I mean, we're 99% sure we've got him beat right now, right?
Yeah,
So
well-
yeah, so we're happy when he's bluffing us, right?
Yeah.
And also, Matt and I don't know what it's like to be, a famous movie star at the poker table, a beautiful woman at the table. So maybe like her strategy should be different from ours for that reason.
No, for sure. And that's one of the things that I constantly have to remind myself with students. I have multiple female students, so I've had to start building that into my plan as well. I have to get out of the head of playing as Matt Stout with the way that people play against Matt Stout, and start playing the way that people are against a woman who is a doctor in her 40s. Like, that's one of my examples of my current student. It's like, I have to try to remember that, like, if I'm this person, they're going to look at me and play completely differently, and I have to use that to my advantage.
Which is why live is so much more fun than online, because we can see each other and
Yeah.
kind of like gauge, like even how you mentioned your opponent is Asian. Like some of our listeners might be like, why is that important? Well, generally, like we're trying to kind of profile our our opponents.
I guess I say that too because I've always been really scared of like the male Asian players. They've always like been really good.
Right.
And so I put him automatically in a category of, okay, this is going to be a tougher person for me. And by the end of it for me, there were 4 Asian guys at the table and they were all really good.
Yeah.
So I'm always just more cautious when those guys sit down. I always think of them as what I used to call the online hoodie players. You know, like back in the day when I first started, it was these online like players that wore hoodies that I was like, oh shit, they're always harder than everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that to it. A lot of times I'm hesitant to say in my Run It Once videos what someone's race was, but there's definitely accurate stereotyping in terms of how people play. When a European shows up at your table at the World Series of Poker, they traveled here probably for 7 weeks to play poker in the desert for a reason. Like, they're the best of the best from Europe, so those are the ones that are going to make it over here. It doesn't mean that every European player is better than every American player, but the crop of players that are Europeans at the World Series of Poker are going to be a hell of a lot better than the average American in the field, because the worst and the middle ground players are still in Europe. You know?
Yeah, they wouldn't have made the trek, and they wouldn't have gotten an Airbnb for 7 weeks and everything else. Yeah, so obviously there are some Asian players who don't know what they're doing, and there are some fish from Germany, right?
Of course.
But generally speaking, we have to kind of do profiling. It's not just racial profiling. Like, I'll notice if somebody has expensive shoes or a really nice backpack. I'll be
watch,
like, things
they're
like
profiling
that.
me just by being a woman.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the same thing. I was taught the minute you sit down at the table, you start putting everyone in a category of what you think they're going to be like as an opponent to you.
Right. And where's my profit going to come from?
Yeah.
Which of these opponents is more likely to make mistakes than I am? Right. Yeah.
And it's the same kind of profiling you do when you sit down with Old Man Coffee of any race. It's like, okay, this guy is probably playing super tight. Like, it's not even a racial thing. It's just like the headphone, hoodies, backpack. It's like, okay, this guy's probably a pro, or at least like a very heavy grinder. Like, they're going to play somewhat well. You have to
He's
play
got
differently against
ranges.
them. And then until proven differently, this old guy is just a nit, and that's how we should approach it.
He's ordering coffee, and he's here for the coffee.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so we're just going to call this 1500, right? We're not
Yes.
check raising, right?
That's what I do.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so you call. What happens on the turn?
The turn comes another king.
You got to be kidding me. We got all the kings?
We got all the kings.
All right, so we're not going to lose this hand, right? So that's good
We're not
news,
going to lose the
right?
hand. It's just a matter of how do I. Well, one, I'm just hoping he has an ace,
Yeah.
and or a pair, because then either way he's got a full house that he's going to probably want to continue with. So I'm just going to continue to act scared, and I check the turn.
All right, so what do you think about this strategy, Matt? Like, do we really think he's going to lose a lot of chips if he has just any pair, or do we really need him to have an ace?
No, we need him to have an ace to get a double up. He should be pot controlling and not putting in any more chips with smaller boats, just because this is obviously a very bad texture to have an underpair.
Do we like the decision to check here on the
Yeah,
turn?
if I check all flop, I check 100% on the turn. I think that I would sometimes check raise flop depending on my image and how I think he's going to proceed, whether I think he's ever going to be like floating his Broadway gut shots and stuff and trying to outplay me on the turn. Obviously.
Right, but if Shannon Elizabeth check raises on the flop, this guy can fold an ace.
Exactly.
Right?
That's why I get to check raise more. And I said I'm fine with her decision, but as me, I definitely check raise more often because they just never believe me.
Yeah, me too. No one thinks I ever have. No one thinks I ever have anything. All right, so we check and we like it.
Okay.
So does he?
So he bets.
He bets again on the
Yeah,
turn.
he bets 2,500 on the turn.
Okay, at this point, I'm starting to think he's got an ace, right?
Yeah, we got it. I think we have to check raise here and jam river because I think he's probably just going to call with an ace. I don't think he's going to barrel again. This is also one of the things is like if you think that he's going to continue betting again without an ace on the river, then I start calling and checking the river more often and hoping to just get the check raise in on the river. But if you check all twice on this board, I think he's just never really going to bluff river.
But he will bet that ace again.
But the problem is some people might not. Like, I mean, they know that they're only getting called by ace-x on the river, so it's actually not a terrible idea to check back with an ace on the river because you shouldn't realistically expect to get called by queens or worse, and you're just putting yourself in a tough spot against quads.
It feels so nitty, but
It's
I
a
guess
very weird
I guess
board.
you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very weird board, but like, I mean, unless you really think that you're just getting called often enough by underpairs, which realistically expect.
Yeah.
I would
Well, I mean,
think.
Shannon has queens, jacks, tens, all in her range. But I guess you're right. Like if he bets again, she's probably only calling with an ace or a king.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Or on the flush draw. Remember, there's 2 clubs out there. There could be a chance that I'm stupid enough to be trying to
Well,
chase
yeah.
the flush draw.
Once that third king shows up. though,
once the third king comes out, he shouldn't expect you to have flush draws at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to love, even if you hit a flush, if you have a flush draw when there are 3 kings on the board. Because, like you say, any pair is a full house. So,
Yeah.
All right. So, we're just going to call the 25 then?
So I just called the 25.
All right. So, I think Matt wanted to raise it.
I just thought that would be telegraphing too much
It's
because
so
I
hard to have a king.
Yeah, how do you have a
Like,
king? Yeah.
It's a spot where I get where you're coming from in terms of like it telegraphs too
Yeah.
much and you don't want to give it away, but like you're repping one card in the deck. It's like, come on, do you really have it? He's
Yeah.
going to think that you're chopping more often than you really have quads.
And this brings up a good point too. Like, it's really hard to play quads or a straight flush just because in all of our lives we hardly ever have that. So it's not like we have a lot of practice playing
Yeah.
4 of a kind. You know?
But the nuts is the nuts.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
I actually going back, I remember Chris Ferguson saying that one time about when he had quads at a final table. He's like, it's the same as having like the 10 on an ace king queen 10, ace king queen jack. Like
Yeah.
the nuts is the nuts. It's just you got to just think about combos and blocking. This is a spot where the fact that you have the only king is. There's no real blocker effect, and you just have to hope they have ace X. But there's other spots where what you block and don't block is a lot more relevant. Like if you have top set on a queen 7-3, it's a lot harder to fast play than to fast play bottom set because they have more top pair combos for you to try to get value from. So I think it's important to just kind of, try not to get too excited and just try to think clearly about what they can have and how to best extract value, whether it's trying to induce bluffs or trying to get value out of worse hands.
Yeah, so now he bets 25 here on the turn, and we have like another 16,000 behind or something like that. So
what should the raise have been?
yeah,
If
I think we should check raise and hope he has an ace.
Yeah, what should I raise to?
You have 16K. Wait.
Is that right?
No.
No,
She
we
starts
said
with
25.
I start with about, say, call
Sure.
it 25, yeah.
Sure, it starts with 25, raises 25, and C bets 1.5. So she has 4 big blinds in the pot, has 21 big blinds left on the turn.
Okay, so she's got 21,000.
And there's about 10 big blinds in the pot. When he bets, what was the sizing on the turn?
25. Yeah.
We're going to go linear sizing. So we're going to try to figure out what percentage pot gets us all in and go with the same percentage pot on turn and river. So if there's 10 big blinds in there, that's 2.5. We can check raise small to like, I want to say 6K or 6,500
That's
so
what I
that
was
we have
thinking.
like 15K left on the river or somewhere around there. We want to just try to make sure that we don't raise too big on the turn and get them to fold too much on the turn, and that we're not going to like min raise and then have too much to shove on the river. So you want to find like the linear sizing where it's the same percentage pot.
Okay.
This is that geometric sizing
Yeah.
we've been talking about
Same
on the
thing,
podcast. Yeah. All right, so we do 6,500, and then we would have like another 15,000 left for the river shove.
I think
that
that's
would work,
assuming
yeah.
he doesn't fold.
He's
right
going
there.
to fold if he doesn't have an ace. At this
Yeah.
point, we just have to be optimistic, right?
Yeah.
And assume he's got an ace, or you're not gonna get any more chips. Matt says if we just call here and we check again on the river, he's not going to bet again, even with an ace.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, he might bet with an ace for sure, but I just don't think he's going to bluff often enough. So, like,
Yeah.
we want to just start targeting the ace and trying to get max value out of the ace because our hand is so hard to rep. Like,
Yeah.
it just, those are the spots where, like, you have an ace and you're like, well, he might have it, but, like, I'm not folding when you have to have one card in the deck to beat me. Like, there's just that element to it of like it's so hard to believe that someone actually has like the one hand.
Even a trustworthy actress like Shannon Elizabeth.
So, I mean, I guess my thinking was similar, but on a later on a later street rather, because by the time the river comes, I'm thinking if I make a bet here, he could very well think I'm just bluffing at the pot because I've been caught bluffing a few times. And then maybe he will raise me and try to put pressure on me to put all my chips in.
Okay, so then
That was my thinking.
So then if we do this, we can just call the 2,500 now on the turn and then make a,
And then I
a
make-
bet on the river.
Yeah.
But if you shove, it's going to be an over bet for the pot size, right?
Right. So I wasn't going to shove on the river, but I was
Okay.
so what I did is I just made a bet, a
Right.
normal bet.
Now, when I have the nuts, I try to think, how can I get all the chips in?
Yeah, but I really thought that if I make a bet here and he's got an ace, he's going to raise me.
Aha.
That's what I thought was going to happen, to put pressure on me, thinking there's no way she has an ace and she's making a play again. But that's why I wanted to go through the hand, because I
Yeah.
felt like even after it was over, I wrote it down. I'm like, I may not have played that
What do you
right, but I'm
think,
not
Matt?
sure what I should have done.
Yeah.
The problem with the logic of trying to get him to think you're bluffing on the river is that you check call twice. You can't check call with nothing. Like, I guess you could have like a royal draw. I don't remember if there was a flush draw on the flop, but like,
There's a flush draw on the flop and the turn, and I'll tell you now that the river completed that flush. Not that it matters, but it did.
yeah, with trips on the board, it becomes somewhat irrelevant. He shouldn't expect you to value bet. I mean, this does open up the door to make like a really small, like fake block bet, like trying to make it look like you have queens and don't want to get raised, or you have an ace and you're not sure if he has a king, blah, blah, blah. Like,
To induce some aggression.
exactly. You could bet like 10, 15% of pot, like no more than 20 when you're trying to do something like this. And it's a good way to try to get people to spaz out, or to, like if he feels like he wants to blow you off a chop. If you also have an ace, he could think that you're just doing this with an ace and he could try to bluff you. Or he could just take a hand like a flush where he's just trying to bluff you off a full house now. But he's not going to bluff that often on this board, just because it's so easy to have ace X and it's hard to get someone to fold out ace X here. This is just a really weird board, but I think that you want to start focusing on how deep are we and how can I get it all in by the river?
Yeah.
Like, and if you're too deep, then you kind of deviate to trying to get as many big blinds as you can. But at all times, when you're in these post-flop spots with the nuts and you're shallow enough to think that you can get it all in, you just want to think about the exact path and the best way to try to exploit his range and the sizings to go with from there. Like you said, the geometric linear sizing, trying to make sure that if you're trying to get it all in, you go with the same percentage pot on the flop, turn, and river. That's why I was thinking immediately on the flop, like, and was running through the scenarios of, okay, there's 6 big blinds in there. If I bet 3 on the flop, 6 on the turn, 12 on the river, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out whether you can get it all in by the river just by going with a certain sizing.
Right.
So since that one comes up just short of your remaining 23 big blinds, by going 3, 6, 12, we go with like 4, 8, 16, and then we're all in, or like just slightly smaller, whatever it is. That's like the best way to try to really start your framework of trying to extract max value, is just figuring out, can I get this all in by the river? What sizings would it take? What's the best point to check raise at, or to try to make a fake block bet at, or something like that? In this case, I think we're just shallow enough, and I think it's going to be hard enough to extract bluffs on this particular board that I would consider just going bet, because I don't think that people are floating or bluffing or bluff catching as much with underpairs on this particular texture. So it's like a little bit of a weird board in that sense. There'll be other spots where we'll definitely try to get a lot trickier and are going to try to misrepresent our range more. Mm-hmm. But I feel like this is just shallow enough and the kind of texture where we should, especially after that turn card, because then all of his weak aces, because you're worried about him putting you on a bigger ace, even because, you know, he didn't 3-bet, he probably doesn't have ace queen, ace jack. He's more likely, if he has an ace, for it to be a weaker ace. But on that turn card, it's the perfect turn card for you to just be able to go bet turn, jam river, and he's just going to call down with ace X. But the more you think that he's going to try to bluff you because, you know, your image as opposed to mine, the more you do want to go for c-bet flop check turn, or check flop and let him try to bluff and see if he'll hang himself check betting flop and turn. I think it makes more sense in your shoes than mine to try to induce a lot more often.
Yeah, we have 23 bigs to try to get all in. I wanted to c-bet 1.5 on the flop and then check raise the turn and then shove the river.
Yeah, because that particular turn, I mean, you can induce a lot of bluffs if he did float you with queen jack, jack 10, queen 10, or he has a flush draw and decides that he's going to try to bluff that turn. But once he bets turn, I think that he's just going to shut down so often because of the board texture. It's like people are just going to have quads or kings full of aces when they check call you. Like, you really want to bluff into that range. It's like a very rare spot where if you check call turn, like it's so hard for him to bluff river.
Yeah. So now that we've checked and called on the turn, what happens on the river?
I think it was like 7 of clubs, so
But
it
it finished
completed
the
the
flush,
flush.
okay.
Yeah, it was just an irrelevant card.
Now, we've been check calling this whole time, right? Did we see bet the flop?
No.
No, we checked and he bet and we called. Now we checked and called on the turn. So, Matt, is it going to alarm this player if she suddenly puts in a big bet on the river
Yeah, I either go with check or like 10% pot.
to try to induce that raise?
raise and just try to be like, oh, well, I have a flush and I don't know if it's good. And I have an ace and I'm afraid you have a king. Like,
Right.
you're just trying to be like,
Yeah.
2 big blinds.
And try to look as scared as you can. Yeah.
It's also a trick that works well because sometimes, and I've been the spazzer in this case, where I was going to check back a river and then someone bet like 2 big blinds and I just went ballistic on them. And I was like, okay, you got me to spaz out.
It works on me about
if it
85%
works on-
of the time.
Yeah, if it works on me, I got to start incorporating this into my game because this is going to work on a lot of people.
I
Like
mean,
anyone,
as soon as I see that little bet, I'm like, oh, screw you, buddy. You're not getting to the river this cheap. Yeah. It's such a powerful tool against me that I'm learning that I can't just raise just because somebody bets small. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can if they're bad.
Right.
Like if they're, and that's why like when you start making these plays against people are going to be like, oh, Shannon Elizabeth, that 10% pot on the river. I'm
She has
just going to raise
nothing.
my
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
range.
yeah,
like
yeah.
they're going to think that you're not good enough to make this real small bet to induce, and you're just going to show them that they're very wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And then high five your coach afterwards. All right. So how did you play the river?
I bet out, but I bet 10.
Okay, so 10 is what is that about the pot size now? It's a pretty
It's
big
a little
bet.
under, yeah.
It's a little under the pot, yeah.
But I figured if I wanted to look like I was bluffing because I'd
Yeah.
been, like I said, I'd been caught, that I just needed to make a decent sized bet.
No, I don't hate it.
You just have to remember that with the way this particular hand played out, your image isn't quite as significant in terms of having been caught bluffing, just because your line was check call after you raise under the gun. Like, it looks like you have to have something.
Yeah, what are you checking and calling with this
Well,
whole
and
time?
I waited a long time too, like before I made the bet. So I like thought about it, which I don't know. My way of thinking was, oh, she's trying to decide if she's going to bluff at the pot or not. You
Right,
know, like
right.
that was like, if I go too fast, it's too confident.
Right.
But
So-
if you go too slow, it looks too obvious sometimes. Like, no one tanks for 3 minutes and then bluffs
Well, I didn't
usually.
think 3 minutes.
No, I know.
But-
I just
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
don't
yeah.
get to the extremes.
On
It's
the
like
extreme, yeah.
Yeah.
both the snap bets and the very late bets are very
Yeah.
weird. You want to just find
Yes.
some middle ground and
Harder to read.
give yourself a little bit
Yeah.
of time, but not go too crazy where you're going to get into your own head of, oh, well, I can't bluff 3 minutes in. Like,
Yeah.
The problem with betting 10, to me, is that you're really never getting called unless he has an ace.
yeah.
Well, that's what I was hoping, right? I want him to have the ace. And
Right.
I actually thought at that point he did. That's why I said I thought he would raise me
and he folded.
to put me all in.
But it sounds like he folded.
Yeah, he
okay.
folded.
Just got air.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
he
didn't
probably
fold.
had nothing the whole time, which if we knew that, obviously we would check the river or try that
Yeah,
little
yeah.
dinky bet that Matt was mentioning
Exactly.
to induce him to keep bluffing you or something like that.
Yeah, but this is also why, as played, I definitely check the river.
Yeah.
If I'm not going to make my little like
Baby
10%,
bet. Yeah.
10% psych you out bet.
But so now knowing that he probably had nothing, if I had check raised the turn, I'm sure I would have lost him there.
That's
Yeah,
true
that's
too. Yeah.
That's fine, but if he wasn't going to bluff river, it doesn't make a difference. And if you're ever going to not double up against an ace, then you're losing out on a lot of value by not check raising turn. So we have to look at it in the long term. We can't be results oriented and be like, well, he didn't have anything, so this was clearly the best way to play the hand. You have to be. It's the same as everything with a game of information. You have to be able to use all the information that you have in the moment to the best of your ability and just be able to live with the result. And a lot of times you're going to there's always going to be that inclination to be like, oh, I should have played it differently now that I know his hand. But like, if you're accurately putting someone on a range and they showed up with a hand that you thought was in their range, then you probably played the hand fine.
Okay, so to review the whole thing, I should have done a small bet on the flop and checked the turn.
Yeah,
Or check raise the turn.
I tend to either go with the c-bet small check, check and check raise, or I mean sometimes we even check and check call turn and just induce and try to get the river check raise in. I would either go with c-bet small check turn or just go bet and hope that he has ace-x and that he doesn't. Just because of that particular turn, I wouldn't just always go bet, but with the way the board ended up running out, if I bet flop, I know that, I may be able to induce one bluff by checking turn from like the brick gut shots and the flush draws he might have, but after that, like it's hard to get him to bluff again on this kind of texture. So,
And if you are going to bet, you want to do 3-6-12. That's that linear geometric sizing that gets your whole stack in against an ace. But again, when we do that line, we're just really counting on him having an ace, or else it's not going to work because he's not going to just keep calling you with nothing.
Yeah, and on boards where we expect to be able to induce more bluffs, then we're going to get trickier a lot more often. But this board, it's just once he gets one or two small bets in, it's hard to imagine him not putting you on kings full of aces or quads and just fully giving up.
You weren't going to magically get all in.
No.
Because he didn't have an ace.
And honestly, like, it's really hard for me in the moment to constantly calculate pot and figure out a percentage of the pot.
Me too, yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be sitting there a long time and I would need my calculator. Like, I'm just not, I don't have your brain, Matt.
All right, fun story from 8th grade, real quick.
We don't want those kinds of stories.
No. I did
Hot for teacher or something.
I did a multiplication test and showed no work, got 100, and my teacher thought I cheated, so she made me retake the entire test in front of her. I got a 96 while I showed no work again. And then she hadn't said that she thought I cheated. I just looked at her with the smug grin and was like, still think I cheated?
Did you say that?
Yeah. Of course I did. I was just as snarky then at 13 as I am now.
Maybe even more so.
And it was a friend of my mom's, too, so I was even more offended that she thought I cheated.
The good news is your son is very, very smart. The bad news, he's kind of a jerk.
Oh, I'm a total, like, there's no question. It's like, I like to say, like, a lot of people are like, oh, I match energies with people. I was like, no, I one-up energies.
Yeah.
If you're going to be nice to me, I'm going to be even nicer to you. If you're going to be a dick to me, I will show you what a dick is.
That's true. Yeah. And so, because he is so nice and matching energy, we're going to have our big charity event at the Sterling Club on July 3rd, charityseriesof.poker.com, right?
Org.
Okay.
Org.
I can fix that.
You can leave that.
We can leave it in there. charityseriesofpoker.org.
We got this far without me saying out of pocket, anything out of pocket. You're not having to do any edits, and now you're going to give them the wrong URL. Shame on you, Clayton Fletcher.
That's okay. I did a radio interview the other day, and they got it wrong every single time. And I kept correcting them, and they're like, "Oh, we'll just fix it on paper and put it on the website." No. Yeah, they got it wrong every time.
We give up.
I'll probably just keep this. Listen, Shannon Elizabeth and the Shannon Elizabeth Foundation, it's obviously a great cause. You love animals. We love animals. This is a great thing. By the way, fun fact, if you Google Clayton Fletcher, this lion poacher comes up.
What?
Yeah, like there'll be like 17 pages of me doing comedy or poker, and then there's this guy, this like rich guy that goes to Africa and poaches lions.
That's
so
horrible.
I swear to God, that's not me.
No, well, thank goodness, because I don't think I could be here with you right now if it was. We're working against you then.
Yeah. There's like a CEO of a medicine company, and then there's this other guy that poaches lions, and the rest of the Clayton Fletcher pages are me.
Well, then I would have to show your picture to our anti-poaching team to make sure.
Wanted, dead or alive.
Yeah, that they never let you on property.
Very good,
A
Matt.
bounty on your head.
Yeah, exactly.
And not just in the charity event.
That's right. One more thing, Matt, about the charity event. What else you want to tell us?
Come have a good time. It's the last chance we have during this World Series of Poker to have a little fun, remind ourselves why we play this game. I'm playing the main event shortly after that, and I always love having a charity event day 1A of the main so that I remind myself after 6 weeks or 5 weeks of the constant grind at the World Series of Poker, it can be draining. You can feel like you're going through the motions. So it's one of the reasons that CSOP is probably the only reason I'm still in poker and still able to do this for a living, because I absolutely love this game and I have so much fun raising money for amazing causes, and we have such a good time. It's like one giant home game. So come out, support her foundation, the amazing work she's been doing in South Africa, and come play some cards.
Thank you so much for being here, Matt and Shannon. Looking forward to seeing you July 3rd.
I can't wait. Thank you so much. Thanks for doing this. It really means the world to us. It's been a really tough year for fundraising for everybody, with elections all over the world and the wars. Like, we really need it to keep our doors open. So every little bit helps, and having people come out and have a good time means the world to us. Thank you.
Come out, have a good time, help us raise money for the Shannon Elizabeth Foundation. And so, for Shannon Elizabeth and for my good friend Matt Stout, and for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, with special thanks, as always, to our very generous sponsor, ACR Poker. I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas, please. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart.